Are you filled with fear, doubt, worry about the future of our country? Do you feel the urgency to act before it's too late? If yes, then this podcast is for you. It's time for us to confront the critical issues threatening our nation's fabric, our democracy itself, regardless of our political stance. If you are ready to face reality, handle the tough questions, and find real solutions, then here's your host, Debbie Lynn Molyneux.
Hello and welcome to the Terrified Nation podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Lynn Molyneux. Can we save it? Is it too late for our nation? Or do we have brighter days ahead? Well, that's what we're exploring in this podcast series. And for me, the answer is a resounding yes, we can save our nation. And we must. Now, this show is where we explore alternatives to being afraid or angry or feeling hopeless. And I like to start each show with a question that we'll explore together. And today's question is, how do you judge a leader? Now, we love heroic leaders. We admire and trust heroes to tackle our biggest, thorniest problems. And in a way, we like our heroes to take care of us. You know, that Superman with his cape, that Batman avenging injustice, because it relieves us of our citizen responsibilities. But what happens when our leaders fail us? And how do we replace a heroic leader who has become too bloated with their own freaking ego? Or maybe they've become older and sometimes are incompetent. Now, I do believe that heroic leaders are really good for specific times and certain challenges, like uniting people against a common enemy. We find those heroic leaders very charismatic, and their inspiration is compelling us to work as a team. They help us find the courage to tackle the tough things. And as we are a team, we are supporting the hero's vision of our future. That's what a good heroic leader does. And yet, I think that there are several situations where heroic leadership is not particularly helpful and could actually harm us. I find heroic leadership is harmful when the chosen hero causes distrust and he encourages paranoia among his followers. We must choose our heroes very, very carefully. And we have to identify the values and the virtues that our country needs, and then measure our leaders by these values and virtues. Way back in 2019, only 5 years ago, there was a project launched to help college students who were voting for the first time. And it was called Vote by Design. You can look it out at votebydesign.org. Now, their workbook helped voters to think about all the qualifications needed to be president. It started with the outlining the qualifications in the Constitution, and then leads us through an exercise of both personal and professional skills and characteristics. Now, reading through this workbook, it was kind of like jury duty for me. I didn't really want to think this much about it, but once I was there and I was reminded of my citizens' responsibility, I knew that I had to do my best. And I remember, having served on 2 juries, serving with pride because I am part of the integrity of the system, of the American rule of law. And in this instance, as citizens, it's our job to be the job interviewer. And the more we identify the qualities that we want our chosen and elected leaders to have, the easier it is to make those choices. There are so few of us that are happy with a likely presidential candidates here in 2024. But our excitement or feelings about the candidates are really unimportant at this time. It's what we do with the choices that we have. Have you considered the team that is supporting the 2 likely candidates for president? So we could extend this exploration of qualities, values, and virtues to the vice presidential picks and to likely cabinet members. Now, don't overwhelm yourself. Just maybe look at the vice president and then one or two possible cabinet members. This is prudent as a citizen, as the job interviewer, because both of the candidates or likely candidates for president are older. They're elders. Death is a real possibility. So I want to know, who are their current and past advisors? Who is the hero in waiting, so to speak? And what are the qualifications and skills that they have, that they offer? Because we might need them to support or replace the president. So who are the people surrounding our candidates? And what type of leaders are on the team? This choice to examine the team surrounding each candidate is needed because our definition of leader has also been changing and expanding from heroic to facilitator. And it's a welcome change for me, especially. It's just so needed. Now, a little bit more about facilitative leadership. A facilitative leader gathers a team of experts and then guides them to bring their best to the job. The leader facilitates a solution that did not exist before. It was not previously known. In other words, nobody has all the answers until the team develops them. And the solutions that teams come up with that are this team of rivals, so to speak, end up being better solutions than any one individual could offer by themselves. And facilitative leaders normally share credit for accomplishing their goal with the larger team, with the entire team. It is a longer and messier process. Patience is required. And Abraham Lincoln, as I alluded to, was this type of leader. In his time, he held the nation together through a civil war. Now, heroic leaders, as I said earlier, are great for some things. They command action. They also, in the shadow side, tend to make everything black and white, avoiding nuance. We have enemies and we have friends. There's no in between. Now, our human brains love this. It is simple and it's easy to follow, and we don't really have to think much for ourselves. But it's also like having a hammer in our hand, and we think every problem is a nail that we just have to pound. But if instead the problem is complicated, and instead of being a nail, it's actually a corkscrew or a live person, the hammer approach makes things worse. Teddy Roosevelt was this type of leader. He exposed corruption with his Rough Rider persona. And he was sometimes effective in breaking up and calling forth the corruption. But there was also unintended consequences. And for Teddy Roosevelt, and people were the collateral damage for his heroism. So as we enter these remaining months of the 2024 presidential election, our duty calls as we face an election rematch that no one wants. If we abdicate our role as a citizen, power-hungry people will fill that void with whatever serves them or benefits them the most. And the conflict profiteers who are in season right now, they're going to keep us outraged at each other as their business model so they can make a buck. Conflict profiteers line their pockets with cash by feeding our fears and our anger and our despair. Don't let them do it. It is our civic duty to thwart continued dysfunction by assuming the mantle, putting on the responsibility, the cloak of citizenship. We are the job interviewers, and it's up to us to pick the best presidential team to move our nation forward. We can do it. We will do it together. In closing today's show, I'd like to thank you, the listeners, for giving a damn about our nation. We may be a terrified nation today, but we can do better. We can save the USA. Join me next time.
So that's it for today's episode of Terrified Nation. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to subscribe to the show. You can get advance notice of new episodes and bonus content by signing up. Head over to terrifiednation.com and join us on the next episode.